If gliding silently above the dark, crime-infested streets of Gotham, solving mysteries with borderline supernatural technology, and beating criminals senseless as the Dark Knight is your thing, and you've enjoyed the past several Arkham games where you spend hours upon hours doing literally those exact things, then you'll be happy to know that the next Batman game does appear to be on the way from Warner Bros. Now, we have seen teases and subtle hints at the next Batman game for well over a year now, and this has, of course, given the gaming community plenty of fodder for speculation and theorizing. But the last couple of months have been different. Leaks and rumors have been ramping up, both in quantity and apparent credibility. While most Batfans were probably anticipating some morsel of news during the PlayStation 5 reveal, it seems that event was not the venue Warner Bros. Was aiming for, but rather now, all rumors and speculation seems to be pointing to an official reveal in August. Whether that would be on its own or as part of the larger DC fandom virtual convention is still up in the air, but odds are we'll know more by then. For now though, between the most credible leaks and rumors that have surfaced, we do have enough to put together a broad idea of what the next Batman game will probably entail. The most important thing to know about the next Batman game is that it does not appear to be developed by Rocksteady themselves. The developer of the first two Arkham games, as well as Arkham Knight, seems to be toiling away at something else entirely. Rumors seem to point to it potentially being a Harry Potter game or even a Suicide Squad game. But regardless, the next Batman game appears to have Warner Bros. Montreal behind the wheel again. And I say again because they have made a game in the series before, the Arkham Asylum prequel, Arkham Origins. While Origins surely wasn't received quite as glowingly as the other two games that preceded it, it was still more than worthy of being in the series, as it held true to many of the tropes and design choices of Asylum and City, and didn't really screw them up in any major way. If anything, the biggest problem with Origins was its steadfast, unbreakable desire to stick to the Arkham script, as it were, and pass up on most opportunities for meaningful evolution for the series. And since we know all of this, it's probably safe to assume that the next Batman game will hold true to the combat style, the types of gadgets, the control scheme we've come to be so familiar with in the Arkham series. So, if you really enjoyed the Arkham games up to this point, odds are you'll have plenty to look forward to here, as much of the fundamentals and bedrock principles that made those games what they are will still likely be intact. That said, there are also some things that seem to indicate that the next Batman game is broadening the scope of the series in some major ways. Hardcore fans of the series might remember some teases from late 2019 that Warner Bros. Montreal released on social media of some mysterious emblems that seem to represent different factions, possibly different crime families or paramilitary groups, that may be conspiring together to finally take Batman down once and for all. If this, or something similar, is the case, we could be in for a massive battle royale of Batman characters, both good and bad, all clashing together in an all-out war for control of Gotham. While it's hard to imagine them going much further with the world design of Gotham than Arkham Knight did, odds are the size of the story and the cast of the characters for the game will be a sight to behold. Just imagining all of the disaffected Batman characters from previous games, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Bane, and the like, all teaming up against the Bat family for a final showdown, is more than enough to gain my interest, despite me being maybe a little jaded by the series by the time Arkham Knight came out. So, I imagine for those who weren't tired of it by then, the realization of just how big this game might be in terms of its cast of characters should be more than enough to raise a few eyebrows. Another thing we can logically deduce from things we currently know is that the game is potentially fairly far along, maybe even ready to launch alongside Sony and Microsoft's new consoles. Remember, Batman Arkham Origins was all the way back in 2013. That's well over 6 years of development time that could have been, and likely mostly was, spent on this new game, which is an absurd amount to be spent on a single game, without it being either done or at the very least nearly so. Some of the more recent and more credible rumors to surface do indicate that the game was set to be revealed alongside whatever Rocksteady had been up to during E3, but since that was cancelled due to the growing pandemic, they've had to scramble to produce a reveal event of a different sort, which might just be the event in August I mentioned earlier. So, through this extra time, they could have packed even more information into the reveal event, so it might end up being fairly juicier than what we were going to get originally anyway. One massive change to the Batman series that may very well also be happening is a fresh start for the series, illustrated by the dropping of the Arkham name, and instead being set in a fresh, new timeline of events within a much wider series of games that encompasses the entire DC universe instead of just Batman. This is a rumor that has circulated recently among the flurry of new, slightly more credible-seeming leaks that seem to suggest that this game might very well have started off as another Arkham game, but quickly turned into a much bigger experience as it grew, and it just made more and more sense to give it its own timeline and story arc. It actually isn't that rare in game development for a major title to start out as one thing and end up being another. Even Sekiro Shadows Die Twice was reportedly a Tenchu reboot at first, but then turned into more of its own thing. So close. What the new title of the upcoming Batman game is still a point of contention. Different sources seem to be saying it will be titled different things, but the main common denominator here does appear to be that the Arkham name is not part of it. This fresh start and wide scope for the Dark Knight does also appear to coincide with the original teases from the last year that seem to suggest a bigger story with multiple characters coming together for some sort of massive showdown. That concept for the game has likely still carried on throughout the changes to the game's story and place in the wider DC universe. So, while it's probably safe to bet on many of the combat characteristics and gameplay fundamentals that we're familiar with to be in place, what we can expect from this new information is a much larger story and world that will fit nicely with the explosion of technology we'll be seeing in the next generation of gaming consoles. Whatever the upcoming reveal does end up being, you can always depend on us to be there ready to analyze and dissect it for you when the time comes. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.